The most critical challenges in integrating animals into disaster response framework.
Good afternoon, all. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important issue. I am Shatha Hamade. I'm a lawyer and an investigator for Australia's leading animal protection organisation, Animals Australia. We also have our global arm, which is Animals International, and I've been with the group for just over 10 years. I'm an ex-prosecutor as well with the RSPCA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Through our work in Animals Australia and Animals International, sadly we've had a lot of experience in stepping in to disaster relief and emergency services. And to give you an example, over the years we've had many rounds of involvement in Gaza with the multiple years of conflict, and particularly in this last sad war that's raging on. So we've worked with animal welfare shelters in Gaza and in Palestine. We've also worked extensively in bushfire relief. Australia is very susceptible to fires and bushfires. We've also worked in floods, and in fact we were part of the relief support in Pakistan during the 2022 flooding with our esteemed colleague Faisal Ullah, who was our eyes on the ground and facilitated the rescue mission there. We were also heavily involved in the global pandemic issues through COVID. We were issuing a lot of grants and a lot of support to organisations around the world who all of a sudden found themselves with no money because tourists stopped coming throughout COVID, which meant that they could no longer sustain their sanctuaries and their rescue operations. So we've had quite an extensive experience nationally in Australia and around the world. And to Ahmed's very good question around what are the challenges, I thought I would just keep it short and practical, because the thing that strikes me as being one of the biggest challenges in this space is that the government wields all the power. And often they like to operate in their own vortex, their own universe when it comes to policy and management. And we've come at a time in human history where non-government organisations are really the experts when it comes to these kinds of issues. And so the biggest challenge that we see is a lack of collaboration and a lack of coordination between the government and the experts on the ground within the NGOs. And so, for example, in 2020, we had one of the most horrendous bushfires in Australia, the mega fires, and these fires burnt for months. And to give you an example, 1 billion animals were killed in the fires, 1 billion. And something like 18.6 million hectares were burned across Australia. This was a nightmare. And what we discovered was that the government was in over its head. They had these lovely policies that they had written many years ago and were sitting in a drawer in the bottom of a filing cabinet at the Department of Environment. And the NGOs were knocking at the door, begging to be let in to help with the disaster relief and the emergency management. And it took several months for the government to finally admit that they were in over their heads. But this egregious tragedy led to a very strong collaboration between NGOs and the government in disaster relief. It actually led to a Royal Commission inquiry in Australia, which held that the preparedness, the response, the coordination, the recovery of the government was not good enough. And so they had to invite the NGOs to have a seat at the table. And we're currently going through our fire season at the moment because it's a hot summer that's just starting in Australia. And of course, we're seeing the devastation happening in LA at the moment. So these issues are real. and they will only intensify. And so the biggest challenge I see and the biggest invitation I see is for the NGOs to continue knocking on the doors of government and to ensure that you have a seat at the table, because it's the vets and the emergency management crew within these organisations that hold the power and hold the knowledge in terms of the recovery and the response. And so that's what I see as the biggest challenge. In Gaza, which is the only animal welfare group in Gaza, up to 77 countries donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to our relief fund, which enabled vet supplies and food to be assembled. But what we realised was, in terms of advocacy, people don't want to feel helpless. They want to feel empowered. And so being able to personalise the story, not just about the animals, but about the human faces that are helping the animals on the ground, this is what allows people to feel that sense of empowerment and that sense of giving. And of course, social media helps a lot with that. So finding that way through in terms of advocacy and communication, where you don't sort of leave the helpers and the backers in terms of the financial support. You don't leave them feeling a sense of helplessness. You want them to feel empowered. And so that's also about fine advocacy and fine communication, which of course, that's the expertise that sits in this powerful group of NGOs. So that's the invitation, and that's what I see as being the practical opportunities and challenges. Thank you. The ecology, as with most parts of the world, has been severely impacted by government action, by sanctioned cruelty, in terms of culling and wiping out certain predators, apex predators, which disrupts the ecology. For example, the overbreeding of rabbits, foxes, wild horses, camels, dingoes, etc. So what's happening at the moment in Australia is, as in most areas of the world, there's an imbalance in these populations, and so some of the populations are thriving, seemingly out of control, and some are being wiped out because of the predation. So what we're doing in Australia is the narrative around the camels, etc. You always have to take a step back and question everything. And to give you an example, at the moment, I'm running a Supreme Court challenge because our government in Victoria has almost wiped out the dingoes. And the dingo is a very important ecological habitat balance in our native structure. And so because of that, other things are now imbalanced. And it's always going down to the heart of the issue. The heart of the issue is this. Governments want votes. And so when you have the livestock sector and industry knocking on their doors saying our livestock are being threatened, or I need to clear land but I can't because of this, or there's a fight over the food source and the water source on my property because there's camels coming in, there's foxes, and my livestock can't sustain on the property. So what the government likes to do is kill. This is always the first step because they want an immediate solution. They just want to poison and kill. And so what we do as NGOs, as advocates, is we unravel all of this. And we try to understand what started this process, and we get to the root of that process. And it's not always the killing. That's a very short term, it's not even a solution. It's just being seen to have a solution. So what we have been doing is questioning how they are surveying the populations out there. How are they extrapolating the data to show that there's an overabundance of a certain species? What's the sociability between all the other species out there? So it's really about questioning everything, but doing it from a science and evidence-based approach, not an emotional approach, not throwing rocks at each other from opposite ends of the room, not us versus them. It's literally find the experts and get to the heart and the root of the issue. There's always solutions. There's immunocontraception, where you can dart the females to stop the reproduction. These are longer-term solutions that generally the government is not interested in because their portfolio or their election window is 3 years or 2 years, and they want the votes to sustain now. So they have to show that they're doing something now, you see. So it's unraveling that. And so that also requires public interest. There's got to be a buy-in from the public. They need to become aware that you've got to educate them around these issues so that they have an interest, because with the public interest, the government starts to listen because the votes are affected.
Exactly.
So it's a whole sociability around all of these issues, but the first step is always question everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Australia's national current affairs program, 60 Minutes. And as soon as that footage aired, there was massive public outcry. The government panicked. It was huge. It was actually the media story of the year. Immediately, the government shot into action and they prohibited any shipments leaving Australia from May to October. They passed that in law. Immediately, they ordered the exporters to halve the amounts of animals on the ships. This is just off the back of Faisal's footage. But he was prepared to go even further. He was prepared to be telling you stories about the other person's behaviour. I just want to give you an example. I mentioned earlier to you that we've been programmed from a young age by our parents, our communities, our religious institutions, our governments to think a certain way. You know, our school curriculum use. If we use them, they're not protected so that we can continue using them. But if we love them and they come into our homes and into our beds, then we will protect them. And this is about turning on and off your soul, your heart, you know, so that you can work through this experience in terms of our relationship with animals and ourselves. But the true meaning of their existence on this earth with us is to promote kindness and compassion. And we know as humans, this is biologically and neurologically, scientifically true. We as a species are here to evolve. And the way that you evolve as a human, having an earthly experience, is through elevated emotion, kindness, compassion, love. This is actually what inspires, and this is what opens up neurological pathways in your mind that actually promote for you to think a different way, a kinder way, and that's where the courage comes from. So the big thing that we all need to do is draw breath, put a line in the sand and ask ourselves, where is my thinking programmed? Where is my thinking not my own? Where is my heart telling me something different to what my mind is telling me? And that's where your answer and your intuition lies, and that's the path that you walk. And the most important thing is to do it together, to do it collaboratively, because doing it in isolation, it can be lonely and scary. You know, Faisal was one man on these ships, but he had a team behind him in Australia just supporting him and sending him best wishes and just being there with him remotely. So it's important that we collaborate and we join in unity and connect on these issues, because it's for our future and it's for our children. So I hope that by being here, you've felt inspired by this story, and I'm just so privileged to be in your company, and I'm so excited about where all this is going and what this is seeding, and I congratulate the organisers. This is just wonderful. So I send you my very, very best wishes. Thank you. This is the band. This is him on 60 Minutes. And just when you didn't think he was awesome enough, this is him in the Pakistan floods in